Hello and welcome to my tutorial about Artifactory and especially about Debian-Repositories. Why we need them and what is influence in your infrastructure with this. This is one of the things we want to discuss now. Okay, my name is Sven. I'm developer advocate at JFrog, and well, I have a strong history in Java related projects, industrial projects, and focusing right now on DevSecOps. The agenda for today. First I will sit down a little bit more comfortable. The agenda for today. Why we need Debian repositories, what's influence and what part of the infrastructure is connected to Debian repositories, direct or indirect. The next thing is why you should have an eye on it if you are thinking about DevSecOps, DevSecOps security, compliance, all this stuff. I will show you how you can solve this one with Artifactory and X-Ray, how to use it, how to ramp it up. And then we will have some ideas of how to integrate in existing infrastructures. Why you need Debian repositories? First of all, thinking about Debian itself. Debian is a Linux distribution, and if you're checking this link here from Wikipedia, you will see that we have 40 or 50 active Debian distributions or variants of this. And one of the more famous one is Ubuntu, for example. But in general, you have a lot of active Debian distributions. And what is part of, what's a place where you're using this Linux? It could be a server installation, classical one on bare metal, but as well it could be infrastructure, something like a router, or it could be an embedded system where Linux is running. So even this one is interesting. And you have classical desktops where people are developing or office work or whatever. And for developers, especially VMs and Docker images in Kubernetes. So how this is running, you have this Linux machine, and during the installation, earlier or later, you will have the need to add some new packages. For example, you have a network install, or this network install image, all the needed components after the minimum system is installed via repository from the remote locations. Means during the installations you are connecting these repositories, and later if you are updating a system, then as well you need the connection to this repository. Security patches, again part of this repository, and mostly it's not in a way that you have just one repository, you have a lot of repositories, because if you're installing Docker on Debian, at least there you need one additional repository from Docker to have access to these binaries. DevSecOps. So if you're checking the points where you're connecting to this one, because you're using Linux, I'm just using here a plain production line for software development, for example. Then during the coding process, you have your developer machines, you have your Linux-based toolings. Your CI environment is based on Linux, maybe components that you are ramping up and ramping down for testing, packaging, monitoring, software, whatever in the whole production line you're looking at. It's mostly something where Linux is not so far away. So it means you have a huge amount of components that are relying on something you have no control about. For example, you have no control about how long something or what is delivered or stored in one remote repository. So it's not only the availability a challenge, even the binary itself. You're installing something and then later you want to have it again, and exactly this version is just not available anymore. If you're installing different environments, you will have access to different repositories. So in the end, you have to handle a lot of different repositories, and this means every machine have to be configured individually, because in sources.list you have to say explicit what is the target of the repository. So direct or indirect, a lot of places in your company are affected by these repositories and their structure. Thinking about security means that you have to add security everywhere. It's not a dedicated place where you're saying, now I have a security check. Security is everywhere or should be implemented everywhere. If you want to have a little bit more details or some ideas about DevSecOps in detail, just check out one of my other tutorials about DevSecOps up and running, for example. But you see here that security is needed everywhere. So what does it mean? In an ideal world, you would have repositories outside, and then inside your own infrastructure, you would have your own Debian repository. From this one, your Linux machines would be just fed so that every Linux machine inside your network or inside your environment will just connect to your repository, and this will give you the possibility that at exactly this point you can start implementing security and compliance rules and checks. The pros for this is that you have full control about the repository and the content itself. So it means how long a version is available. It really depends on you, not on something that is managed by someone somewhere. You have the availability in your hands to make sure that you are independent from the availability external resources or maybe the internet connection itself. The amount of repositories could be lower compared to regular configurations, but you have everywhere the same configuration. And last but not least, you haven't sped up because you're just caching stuff. And if you have this Debian repository in place, this is a point where you can implement security and compliance scannings. So this would be an ideal world. How to use this and how to implement this one with Artifactory and X-Ray. Artifactory is a repository, and you can have inside Artifactory different kind of repositories. One version or one kind is Debian repositories, and then you can connect with X-Ray and scan the content of this repository. So it means that you will have a repository internally that will connect to the outside world, store this stuff in Artifactory, and X-Ray is scanning this one to define what is the pro and con of this, or what you want to scan. You define stateless rules. These rules are combined to policies, and these policies are connected via watches to the repositories you want to scan. So you can have the same policy and rule not only for Debian repositories, but you can use the same rule and the same policy, for example, for Maven repositories as well. This makes it very convenient to implement company compliance and security rules. So, okay, so how to do this one? There are some special things with Debian repositories. For example, a Debian repository, you can't merge all the Debian repositories together, but you can merge together, for example, mirrors of a repository. It's different to Maven repositories. There you can just merge everything together in one virtual repository, but with Debian the structure is not so clearly defined, and the addresses, so it means some content could hide other content. So it's a good advice for every remote or for every repository outside in the world, creating a remote repository internally. And then the next thing is that if you have mirrors, you can add different remote of mirrors together in one virtual repository. Internally, all machines are just going to the virtual repository, so the configuration internally is always the same. But with the remote repositories, you can just go and follow the changes in the outside world. For example, there is a different mirror, or the URL is changing, or whatever. So it's a very flexible system and low maintenance internally. Yeah, that's it. If you have this virtual repository with your naming schema, your internal naming schema, yeah, you can add this one to sources.list, and that's it. Then you have access to it. access. So, as next, we want to check how this is done via the web UI, how to create a Debian repository, how to create a virtual repository, and then how to add this one in a Linux distribution to sources.list. Okay, now we want to have a look at how to create Debian repositories. So for this, log into your JFrog platform instance and go to the administrative menu. This is here behind this icon. And then to the menu point repositories and the submenu repositories. First, you see here the tab local, but we don't want to store own artifacts. We just want to connect to remote and already existing Debian repositories. So you have to go to the remote tab. And I created already a few of them. I will show you how to do it. But if you have a lot of repositories, you can filter the view here if you're typing here some stuff in. And what you can see is, first of all, I really recommend to have a scaling naming schema, just to make sure that you have an easy way to filter and navigate and to see later in different UIs what kind of repository it is and if it is a remote one or virtual one and so on. So here I have, for example, for the Debian, selected the Austria remote and the German remote. These are both mirrors of the original one. So you can see here the URL you need to know. If you don't know or you need a list of available mirrors, you can check it from the Debian site itself. So go to www.debian.org/mirror/list. And they will find a list of all primary mirrors here ordered, or yeah, it's the country, then the URL and the architecture. This is an interesting or important thing. So check for every mirror if the architecture that is mirrored fits to your needs, so that you're not missing something. And then you have here just the URL you're using. Okay, so create 2, 3 or 5 mirrors, it depends on you, with a remote repository. So how to do with this one? It's just you need a key, the URL, and don't forget to enable X-ray scanning. And for convenience, go to advanced and activate allow content browsing. With this you can check via web UI what's the content of a repository. It's just for convenience. Okay, so if you have done this one, so we have now this, let's filter. We have this remote A and remote B from the mirrors. Then you can combine this one in virtual repositories. Virtual repositories should have a short name, because mostly this is a repository you're using inside your configurations. And in this virtual repository, again, give it a logical name. You can select the repositories you want to have inside, and then that's it. Yeah, just limit to the architectures you really need, so that X-ray is not scanning too much, and the compression formats you want to support if there's some special need. So, by the way, how to create. If you start creating a repository, normally you're clicking to new, and then you have to select this type of repository, for example here, the Debian one, and then you can start filling out everything. Okay, yes. Okay, we have the remote repository, we have the corresponding virtual repository. Let's have a look at X-ray. For this, we are going to the main menu, to the menu point security and compliance. And here you have 2 sub-menu points, policies and watches. I will give you just a briefly overview. I have a more detailed tutorial about X-ray itself and the possibilities. So this is just a short overview. So what you need is you have to create the stateless and technology independent rules and policies. Means a policy will contain some rules. A rule, I will edit this one, has a logical name. You can select if you want to have some of this predefined security levels checked, or you want to go to a dedicated range of CVSS scores. Here I just want to see an information in my web UI. I don't want to trigger and failing builds and all this stuff. It's just for overview purpose. This is why I'm calling it rule show everything. If you have this one, you can add a bunch of rules to a policy. The policy should be something that will help you to organize more the use case for the company. So here are the technical names, more or less the technical names, and here could be the domain specific names. And yeah, that's it. If you have a policy, then we can start creating watches. Here again, I have different watches. I have here my watch Debian overview. You see I have connected resources, and this is exactly what we want to do here. We want to connect policies with resources. Let's have a look here. If you're looking inside this watch, you will see the whole list, what was found. You can here filter all this stuff. And for example, here we have inside Debian Buster, GNU PG, version whatever. Then you can see what was found, some more detailed information, what's a component, if it is in compliance on security issue, and so on, some descriptions. What you see here now is a very small graph. You see just Debian Buster, this package has something. For this to show how powerful X-Ray is, I created another watch that is checking some Docker images. Docker images are containing Linux distributions, and here, for example, Debian. So I created some Docker image, for example, here is some demo Docker image. I have something found, and now you can see that inside my Debian IP tables, in this layer, in this Docker image, this was found, and then you have this summary and all this stuff. So what does it mean is, if you have a jar inside a servlet container, inside a Docker image, inside and so on, you can see the whole dependency tree, and all components are in one big component graph, so that you can see this security issue here inside my operating system will be used, for example, in this Docker image that is the base for my whatever you're doing with this Docker image. Okay, so this short view how to create a watch. So if we have this one, we can I want to create one new watch. So again, you're creating a name, a description if you want, and then the important thing is adding repositories. At the same time, you can add build informations and bundles. This is not covered by this talk here, so check please my more detailed one, especially about X-Ray. But as short, just add a repository. And again, what we can do is here, we can filter for Debian. I'm just adding all Debian repositories I have. Here, you don't have to check if it is a mirror or not. Here in this watch, you can just add all Debian repositories you have. You can add them, save, and then you need the policies you want to add. For example, I want to have all security Debian-based ones and all compliance rules. So these policies should be active, and now I have these policies with the corresponding rules activated for this 5 repositories, and that's it. So it will take a little bit to create this view. So it will take a little bit because we just created it. So in the background, it will now start building up this view, and after a few minutes, you have here the view like this one. Okay, that's it. So what we saw how to create repositories. We saw how to create remote one and combine them to virtual one. Then we saw how to create policies with rules and watches. By the way, this demo watch I can just delete. And there's one thing missing. Artifactory. We want to navigate through artifacts. So you can see here, for example, this virtual repository Debian. Then content browsing is allowed. So you can go inside this. But the most important thing is this URL. This is exactly the URL you need in your sources.list to access this one. If you're not so familiar, you can get help here for this, how to use it inside your Debian distribution. Set me up is a point. Then you can just select what type of repository you want to have. Here it's pre-selected based on my navigation here. It's my Debian repository, otherwise check a different one. And then you will see here, for example, the command, how to add this one to your sources list. And here you see again inside this command what's the place of this file. That's it. After this you can just connect, install and update your system. Okay, so now we saw how to create all this stuff. Now it's time to speak a little bit more about integration. Okay, now we know how to do all this stuff in the web UI, how to create Debian repositories and add this to your Linux distribution. The next one is how to use the power of integration that you have with, for example, X-Ray. X-Ray itself can, based on the policies you created, for example, send out information to your CI environment to break a build. Your Jenkins or your CI environment is building a Docker image, you want to scan this one immediately, and if there is something affected inside, you can just break the build, so the Docker image will not be created, will not push to your Docker registry, and nothing will be infected. So the next one is you can notify or send email. This is just a notification, but the really interesting things is you can start webhooks, and with this you can just trigger external processes, or everything can be accessed via REST APIs. So the whole infrastructure can be managed as well as used by a REST API. So with this you can consume third-party products, or it could be consumed by third-party products, for example for reporting or compliance tools or something similar. If you want to try it by yourself, and I really would recommend to try it, go to jfrog.com and start a trial. It will take approximately 10 or 15 minutes, and after this you have your own instance with Artifactory, with X-Ray pipelines and all this stuff, and then you can just start using this one and test it. So how to do it? Go and start a trial, then create a Debian repository. For example, a mirror, just a remote repository for the Debian mirror. Start a Debian VM and add the repository explicit to sources.list. If you have this one, start an update and see what's happening. And if you have created a watch in X-Ray, just check the report, what components you're using, what compliance issues you have or security issues. So that's it. We spoke a little bit about Debian repositories and how many parts in your developer lifecycle is infected or influenced by this one. We had a few overview what DevSecOps means and why you should work on this topic if you have to deal with Debian repositories. I showed you the URL how to start a trial. And I really would appreciate if you give me some feedback. A thumbs up would be awesome, and subscribe my channel, because I'm talking a little bit more about DevSecOps topics as well as core developer topics. So stay tuned and see you later.